Yes.
Awesome. Yay, recording. Hi, Nick.
Hi.
And thank you again for doing this conversation with me. This dialogue that I am inviting you to participate in
Hmm.
is not, it's not even about the verbal conversation or the conceptual information that might come up, but mostly about just connecting with the present and ourselves in the space that we're creating together.
Hmm.
And if people do end up listening to us, maybe they will join in that too. So it's kind of meditation, but not only in silence, but in words too. So that's my idea behind it.
I love that. That sounds really wonderful. And I remember last time we had a conversation like this, kind of in an impromptu way. I was like, wow, this was so amazing and went such interesting places. And I wish we had recorded it. So I'm glad we're recording it this time.
Okay, great, awesome. What I did want to talk to you about is your meditation practice, or our
Hmm.
meditation practice, because we are studying with Steven Snyder
Yeah.
together,
Yeah.
but also um, kind of it doesn't only have to be like strictly about the meditation, the formal meditation practice.
Yeah.
So I guess the question number one is, yeah, what is most alive for you today, in terms of maybe the work that you do or the practice that you do, inner work, outer work. What is it that you would like to talk about? And also maybe answering that question, if you want to share anything about yourself, or just how would you describe yourself, where you're from, what you're doing, if it's relevant for you. Thank you.
Yeah. I I think what's alive for me is the first question of what's alive for me. I, yeah, I just got off of a call that I'm doing with a Sangha, like a Buddhist community. And something that I love about it is that it's a metta Sangha, so it's not any particular tradition, and everyone, even non-Buddhists, are welcome. And I started a dialogue on a YouTube series that I really like called Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. And we're just watching one episode per week and meeting and talking about it. And I'm also doing a thing called Alethea, which is a coach training, but it's like very much a meditative spiritual journey. And it's the coaching conversations are very much group meditations, and or two dyads, 2-person meditations, kind of like what we're doing now. And what I really appreciate about that method is that it kind of affords some of what you can get from a very committed, serious meditation practice to people who might not have the time or the inclination to do that. Um, Unlike us, you and I, who do have the time and inclination to do that, very much so. But it's like, yeah, able to help people along and, you know, get some of the goodness that we get from our practice, maybe without such an intense commitment from it. So yeah, and that is just such an exciting idea to me, because while I would love for everyone to be able to, um, you know, go on lots of retreats and meditate every day, and it's just not available to a lot of people, and yet I want the goodness and the wisdom and the transformation that comes from that to be available to more people. And yeah, I guess by way of introduction, I have been meditating pretty seriously for a dozen years now. And it's really what I see is it's only in the past 2 or 3 years that it's started to really have a positive, well, it's always had a positive impact, but that it's really started to be transformational for me. It took a long time, and I would love for it to not take so long for other people who are interested in this kind of thing. So that's why I'm in the teacher training with Stephen Snyder that we're in together, and why I'm doing all these other more social practices, because it just feels like, in my own experience, a really profound, kind of emergent new way of doing inner work and practice. There's this kind of concept that we have of like the cave yogi that goes alone on the mountaintop and gets enlightened, and I I think that's not ideal for a lot of reasons, not least of which that
Mhm.
most people just tend to get stuck when they're on their own and without wise guidance, you know. So yeah, that's what's alive for me very much, and why I'm so excited about this conversation and this meditation together, because this kind of practice has been very, very much alive for me. And the last thing I'll say, I think I talked to you about this before, but a few years ago, I had an initial awakening experience in a dyad retreat setting, where we were doing dyad meditations that had like a specific structure to it, but we were doing that 10-40 minute sessions a day. So like very intensive dyad practice. And interestingly, in this tradition, they say 30% of people going on this for their first time have an awakening experience on that kind of retreat. So there's just
Mhm.
something so alive and powerful to me about um, being in relation, but from a place of depth and embodiment and kind of meditative poise to
Mhm.
how we approach it. And I know I said that was the last thing I say, but there's one more thing that's alive as I talk about this, and it's that, you know, we try so hard and we practice so long to develop concentration skills and to be able to not be mind wandering, and to, you know, not be so distractible, and to be able to stick with something that we want to stick with. But what I
Mhm.
find is that in conversation, that's just natural. It's like we're just paying attention to each other effortlessly, and we don't have to, like, you know, spend years beating ourselves over the head trying to develop this thing that, when we're just talking to each other, it's just there, and it doesn't take any extra effort or concentration. So yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Um, yeah, there's definitely a lot of resonance for me. Oh. And in a good way, we could end the conversation here.
Well,
Because you're just like you're getting at the essence of yeah, exactly as you were saying, why we're here today. It's so beautiful to, yeah, there's kind of like a, when I'm listening to you, there's permission for me
Hmm.
to participate in that, in um, yeah, to have this conversation with you today. I had a meeting with Stephen a few hours before this, and
Hmm.
it was a diet meditation. And I like how I liked how you said something about a social. You had a phrase like a social meditation or something like that. Um, yeah, I think I will listen. I will listen to the recording again. I want to find the exact phrasing that you used. I really liked it.
Hmm.
Um, and also, yeah, and it's very alive for me because um, I love contact improvisation and dance form. That can only happen when there's two or more people.
Hmm.
It's a moving meditation with another person,
Wow. Yeah.
so it's everywhere in my life too. And I am studying to be uh, like psychotherapist or a consulting, mm, like helping person. So,
Like
and it's
like
every,
what kind of studies? What
well, I've mentioned to you before the narrative therapy,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm looking to go further into just learning how to be a better consultant in the field of psychology. So
Wonderful.
That's why I'm joking that like, yep, we are landing in a similar space. And you kind of were answering the question already, but I have um, this interesting kind of phrasing, wording that maybe that will do something for us. You're talking about not only meditating solely in a cave in the Himalayas.
That's good too, though. I mean,
Yeah, of course.
many times in my life, I've really wanted to do that. So,
Exactly. Totally, not, of course, nothing against that. And here we are kind of landing in this field of dyad meditation, social meditation, kind of group setting, sangha.
yeah.
And the question is this: were there any circumstances that changed the usual state of things? Well, the idea that meditation is only like a soul practice,
Hmm.
uh, after which it was impossible not to do it, after which it was impossible not to kind of participate and find refuge in the Sangha and in a connection with
Hmm.
people, if the
Wow.
question makes sense.
Such a good question. It really does make sense. So, I started my meditation journey a dozen years ago. I think the same way you did on Goenka retreats. I know you've done some Goenka retreats. That was, I'd read a little bit, but I hadn't really practiced very much at all. And I just really knew that I wanted to and signed up for a Goenka retreat. And for many years, that was my Sangha. I would go
Mhm.
on at least one retreat per year, and I would serve another retreat or two in these centers. And I just noticed, like, wow, this is the most meaningful, alive, wonderful experience of my life as I'm doing it. And then I go home, and it's such an abrupt transition, and it was so hard to integrate that depth of experience into my daily life. And for the first 6 or 7 years of my meditative journey, that's what I did. It was like, really, I had my own practice, and I had this retreat setting where I could connect with like-minded people, but that was it. And I moved to a different city. I moved to Portland from Seattle, and I was, I had my girlfriend. Now she's my wife, so that was like my main social connection, and she had a social group. But for years, I just really felt like I didn't have my people, like I didn't have my community that I wanted, and I wasn't so much thinking about it from a meditation standpoint or from a Buddhist standpoint, but whenever I went on these retreats, like there's the last day where you can talk to people. And it was like, wow, like these are the kind of people that I want to be with and that I want to talk to. And then I just like couldn't find them in normal life. It was like there was such this strong separation between the retreat setting and the people that I would find there in my home life. And
Mhm.
yeah, very fortuitously, I went on this day long meditation retreat in Portland. And there I met a person that I had also met on a meditation retreat. And we're still friends to this day. And after this day long retreat, we talked to each other, and a couple other people that were in this group talked to each other. And we said, hey, we should like hang out outside of this group sometime. And we ended up making a meetup.com group to invite
Nice.
other people to our houses, and every other week it'd be at my house, and on the other week it'd be at another friend's house. And we made this group, and within a month or two there were like 200 people that had joined this meetup group. Like there was just such a demand for um in-person hangout, talking about meditation, spirituality, awakening, Buddhism, all those things. And that was such a turning point in my life and in my practice, when I stopped feeling so alone and weird and like an outsider, or like, different from everyone else for having these interests, to having a community of people with, shared interests and language and understanding. And so we'd meet every week, and we'd meditate for half an hour, and then we'd just talk and have conversation. And I really just felt, oh my God, finally, like this is really what I've been
Mm.
missing, and really what I've needed in my life. And it it changed my life. Like, it changed how I felt, it changed how happy I was, it changed, like, I had relationships that I felt really good about and excited to be in. And it was just, yeah, such a defining shift for me. And there, yeah, no way I could go to not having that kind of community now. And then another big shift was going on that dyad retreat about 4 years, 3 or 4 years ago, where it actually introduced the social meditation, meditating with another, being in the same field and having a shared intention. And this style of meditation is very much an inquiry meditation, where we'll shift sides. And for 5 minutes, I will sit silently and I'll ask you a question. And they're always very deep, open ended questions like, tell me who you are. And whatever comes up for 5 minutes as you're meditating, you communicate that. And then you switch. So I had this really profound experience on this retreat. And I brought that back into my community. And we did some of that practice together and we talked about it. But it was like this kind of community, which I still find extremely important, is not related to any particular tradition, and not under the guise of any particular teacher or guru or authority figure. So it's very much peer based and peer led. And I really enjoy that aspect of it, because it just creates this freedom within the container to explore and to learn and to share different perspectives and to share different languages, and and to come together and to create something new within that setting. So yeah, really wonderful question. It brings up
Yeah,
so much aliveness for me.
yeah, that's great. Um, yeah, again, thank you for sharing. Um, it kind of answers the question for me. Uh, about you, because I would wonder, just in this kind of light curiosity way,
Yeah.
because you're part of Stephen Snyder's Buddha's Heart teaching group, and there's other regular meditations with Stephen Snyder, and then you shared with us that you've been part of the reading book club,
Mm-hmm.
and today you've mentioned other few things that you were doing,
Yeah.
and so now you're just kind of opening up the reason like behind that, because I was like, how does he make time for that? And now it's not about the time, it's about the intention and the value, and so it's just so
Yeah.
beautiful.
Mm.
Yeah, like I see, well, yeah, that community, that social aspect behind that.
Mm.
Yeah. The next question, again, you've already started answering it, but it sounds like this, so maybe it will stir up other things. So you're talking about, well, I'm curious about that peer-to-peer
Yeah.
connection, kind
Mm.
of this horizontal power dynamic. And
Or lack of
I'm
power
curious,
dynamic.
or lack of power dynamic, yeah, exactly. So yeah, if talking about that, what kind of harmony do you think that can bring in the world or create in the world?
Mm.
And like, what could it serve when there are these social communal meditations that take place? And
Mm.
other parts of the same question, you can answer it to anything that kind of that your ear enjoys. Where does it lead people, and what does it teach them? How does it affect them? What does it make them think about when
Mm.
there's, first of all, again, communal social meditation groups, dyads,
Yeah.
uh, and peer-to-peer? Yeah, what kind of harmony do you think it brings to the
Harmony
world?
is the perfect word, actually.
Mhm.
What I've found is that this a path of practice, Buddhist or any other path of inner work that anyone would engage on, um, is an intentional moving from disharmony toward harmony. And I think of that in the context of our embodied somatic experience as a person. What I found in myself, and I think this is pretty much universal, is that as a small child and as I started to grow up, as a very small child, I remember just an innate sense of inner harmony and well-being and being in touch with these wonderful, beautiful qualities. And what happened as I grew up, and again, yeah, I think this is pretty universal, is as my personality and as my ego went through normal, healthy development, I kind of lost touch with that sense of harmony, and it created all of these psychological structures in me that ended up feeling really bad, leading to a sense of regular anxiety and long periods of depression and just lots of inner suffering and difficulty, which is what motivated me and led me to a path of meditation practice and going to therapy for a long time. And yeah, all of this has been for me about finding a kind of inner harmony. And what I've found is that the things that became disharmonious within myself were almost exclusively relational wounds that I had suffered in normal human interaction, normal relationships. And kind of the path as I understood it and was originally presented when I started practicing was one of completely disconnecting from relational spaces, going into a silent container that actually precludes any relation whatsoever, with noble silence and even not making eye contact. So, like, really extreme forms of social deprivation and social isolation. And from there, coming in contact with yourself and getting to a kind of inner harmony through this practice while being completely isolated. And so for many years I did that, and I tried to do that, and it was really helpful in some ways. But what I found is that there was this deeper layer of stuff in my normal life that was being triggered all the time in relational circumstances, that when I went on retreat, thanks to that container of silence and social isolation, wasn't being brought up within that context. And what I found on the dyad retreat was that it was this perfect way of having enough of a container for a sense of safety, but enough relational stuff to actually bring up and expose these deeper structures that on the silent retreats weren't being brought up. So they were just kind of staying beneath the surface, subconscious, in a way that I didn't really have contact with. And when I combined all of the skills and awareness that I had developed during these silent retreat settings, and I brought that into I brought those skills and that awareness into the social context. The social context would then bring up all of these early formative experiences in such a way that I could, be with them, start to understand them, and start to let them move and transform, whereas they had just been stuck in below the surface level of consciousness before that. So yeah, it was really that's one of the things I think is so important about relational meditation. Just to reiterate, one is like that the disharmonious aspects within ourselves are formed mostly from relational wounds in relationship with other human beings, with our parents, early caregivers, with the kids at school, with our teachers, with our friends, like that is what forms the kind of stuckness and sense of inner disharmony within us. And then it's from that place that our relationships with people happen. So like with that sense of inner disharmony or difficulty, then our outer relationships are less harmonious, and our life is less harmonious, and we feel anxiety and depression and difficulties. So I see them as totally interrelated. We want them to be separate. We want to say, oh, I can just work on my thing within myself and I can just go to a cave and do that. But in my experience, that leaves a lot of things undisturbed beneath the surface that ideally we want to bring up and understand and work through. And, from that place, then we can have more harmonious relationships with other people. And then I like what we're doing now is flipping that model where it's like, instead of going and being alone and trying to figure out our shit, and then and then once we're perfectly enlightened coming into the world, it's like it's like yeah, being in relationship and being in the world as a means of becoming more harmonious within ourselves and in our relationships. And to me, that both is more fun and works better.
Mhm. Oh, beautiful. One of my beloved and respected somatic teachers, her name is Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen. She has a quote that goes along the lines of we get trauma from relationships,
Yeah.
but we also get healed in relationships.
Yeah.
It's the idea, it's exactly what you're saying, is that
Yeah.
like if the wounding happens there, then there's this idea that, oh yeah, I will go in, become perfect, idealized figure of myself, and then that will protect me from never being hurt again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so, honestly, yeah, I'm just like, it's healing. Listening to you, it's giving me, I'm repeating myself, but as you're speaking, there's just these yeah, memories, images of how I want to be in the world. And for example, yeah, the kind of somatic practice that I do with people too, that like sometimes I give people it's called somatic touch sessions, and there's not much, conversation can happen there, but it's mostly touch, but it's not even about tactile touch, like my hands can be on a person, but it's about presence, it's about exchange. So it's something, you can call it presence work, you can call it meditation, but kind of one person is more on the receiving end, another on the giving end, and also yeah, I live in Moscow in Russia right now, and there's both beautiful connections that I have with family and friends, and also I see places, actually, after I've lived in Canada and lived in communities close to communities that you're describing, like I see sometimes I do come up against, especially in the spiritual circles here, like qigong or other ones, where it's just like no, like I am like a warrior kind of stance, like I am doing kind of my own practice and I need to perfect it, and I don't kind of participate in the field. And again, it's like, I mean, I've been part of like Vipassana too, and there's time and place to everything. I mean, of course, there's waves of development and evolution. Sometimes solo practice is needed, sometimes communal practice is needed. But it's just like right now, listening to you, I am realizing, oh yeah, like this is the work that I'm doing, and this is where I see and feel most benefit and harmony. And I'm just inviting like more permission, more space for that. It's like, oh yeah, like, no, not to be ashamed of it, not to be ashamed of wanting that,
Yeah,
of like, oh, of seeing this, like, oh, this actually works for me.
yeah,
um
yeah.
so thank you so much for that. Beautiful.
Yeah, what that brings up for me is the the archetype of doing it alone, you know, of going out and being uh getting to inner harmony or um enlightenment or whatever you want to call it alone, actually to me feels like a self-protective
Mm,
mechanism
mm,
of trying to not have any more relational wounds or not have any more relational harm. And
yeah.
I I see that in all the meditation communities I'm in. I see that such a strong armoring, you know,
Mm, mhm,
such a strong um, boundary to not really let people in because of that, because of those wounds. So
mhm,
I see that as like a really well intentioned
mhm,
way
mhm,
to stay safe, you know,
yeah,
like not engaging in the more social or relational
mhm, mhm, mhm,
practices. But what's so beautiful, and I was that way for a long time, you know, but what's so beautiful is that as these practices start to work, we want to be more um well, those are the most nurturing, wonderful experiences, are being in relationship with people. So it's like we want that and we crave that, and I think we move more and more towards it. And that, to me, that's it's this virtuous cycle that precipitates the inner healing and transformation. And I agree with you. Like for me, it's these are some of the most powerful and transformative spaces for me, even though I do go on silent retreats regularly. So yeah, like you were saying, I think both are good.
yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I the next question, yeah, I want to connect to what you were saying right now. So when we do open up that armor, or there's an opportunity to maybe thin it a little bit, because
Yeah,
I mean there's layers of it, and
yeah.
again, not to like uh,
Well, that's
there's a
not.
reason for
Yeah, that's not
it.
safe to just totally remove it.
So, what do you think when we do work on thinning that armor? And for example, I'm thinking about doing heart practices
Yeah, yeah,
that you and I are familiar with.
yeah.
Uh, what opportunities does this open up, like for you, and maybe not only in your spiritual life but in your meditation life? So here I'm asking, maybe you've had some beautiful examples where it just made, where you, yeah, where it gave something to you, gave beautiful new opportunities, and maybe to not even to you, but you see that people who do the heart opening practices, kind of thinning the armor, what opportunities does this practice give them? So
Mm.
maybe you can talk about you and others if you want, or
Yeah.
whatever works.
Well, something that Stephen Snyder says a lot, which I really love and really resonates with me, is you know if the practice is working based on your relationships. You know the the proof of of the whether the way that you're practicing is working is how your relationships are evolving. So really, for me, all my relationships have been just totally transformed as I've been doing this practice. I think the most poignant examples that I feel are my relationship with my son, who is 14 years old, and who I had from a one night stand. So it was like a really complicated, difficult, I imagine for all of us involved, situation when I was, 23 at the time, and actually it was a lot of the pain from that situation that drove me into the meditation path as a means to try to work through it and deal with it. And yeah, so like my relationship with my son has just got easier and closer and less contrived and more trusting and happier. and with my wife as well, who we've been together for 10 years, and the past year has just been the best. We just feel so at ease together and happy and close and trusting. And it like, I don't think that relationships can be that easeful or nourishing unless we do this work. What I find actually is like the depth of contact that we have with ourselves and our ability to be with ourselves and our whole being, um, is the depth that we're able to meet with others, and that we're able to relate with them, and that we're able to sense each other and make um, meaningful contact, and be felt and seen and heard. So and that's another reason why I really gravitate toward Sangha meditation community space, because I feel felt and heard and received and related to in such a more poignant and connected and nourishing way, than I do in relationships with people who aren't interested in spirituality or therapy or inner work or things like that. But even my relationships with people like that have gotten a lot better, and improved and been easier going. I would say what I notice in meditators who don't do any of the heart practices and who incline more toward pure concentration or pure insight practices without these heart practices is that I don't see that same level of relational evolution where their relationships get more wholesome and more connected and feel better. And that was true for me as well. My relationships got more rigid and difficult and bad feeling and stuck. And I had this kind of ideological, you could even say dogmatic view of the path and of how to do this inner work and how to be how to make progress on the path, that excluded both the heart practices and the welcoming and including and learning to work with the armoring and the stuckness in the body and all of the somatic remnants of the relational wounds that we were talking about earlier. And my sense is that not including that and not learning to work with it leads to a lot of relational suffering and dissatisfaction in our relationship with other people, but especially in our relationship with ourselves, and how we feel about ourselves, how we feel in our body.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. I have 3 aspects that came up, and I want to share all of them listening
Please.
to you. First of all, while listening to you, I was reminded, because you were talking about relationship and like healing through the material,
Yeah.
and how that allows for relationships to blossom.
Yeah.
And speaking about this image of a solo practitioner, kind of this archetype.
The cave yogi.
Yeah, cave yogi. So, and sometimes when I think like about Buddha, it's like, oh, there's complete independence. He's happy, kind of no matter what, like Gautama the Buddha.
Yeah.
And I have that image, and it's beautiful, and it's an important part of the story. Especially later, I'll talk about like even how differently it happens in male and female culture. There's like different socializing aspects that happen for men and women for those roles. But I remember reading a little bit, like kind of almost fairy tale like stuff about Gautama, the Buddha. And I just remembered that once I read about him and his best friend or attendant, his like right hand, Ananda, like one of his pupils, and there's this whole story how throughout lifetimes, through like eons of reincarnations, if talking about the kind of Buddhist cosmology, they've always like coexisted together, maybe in animal forms. There were times when Ananda was the enlightened one, and Gautama the Buddha was the kind of the attendant. So and right now I'm even feeling a little bit of like chills, like shivers, where it's like, so they meditated through lifetimes, they co-evolved in a dyad.
Wow.
And that's just like, it's just kind of landing in me one more time, because I remember I really liked that story when I read it. And even stories whenever Buddha would be really tired from teaching, because he would teach like he would sleep only a few hours a night, and he was dedicated to always working with people. And Ananda was the one who would give him massages. He would give him like food baths. So he was his attendant. So he was kind of taking care of him. And so again, there's just like even speaking about this closeness, this relationship that we have, and even right now. I am lately interested again in gender roles and different expressions of like sexuality too. And I'm not I'm not saying that Buddha was gay or anything like that, but this idea of closeness, of like energetic closeness that like happened between Buddha and Ananda, who were both like male in that reincarnation, and they were again co-evolving. I like that word. And so it's just really they were in that sense like dependent on each other, and like always coexisting. I find it so beautiful. And the second thing, I'm just, well, in the context, I do live in Moscow, Russia right now, and as I said, and there's a war happening. And like what like, I mean, any conflict between two people or countries or nations, whatever that is, I mean, it's like, it's a relational conflict, like the power dynamic, like the politics, they're all relational. And like to see into the nature of that, into the heart nature of that, I mean, it's like kind of understanding that is what's helping me, well, at least feel compassion for it. And and the third aspect that comes up, I've kind of started talking about it, the interesting, and just see I've been just coming across what I call like a male culture and a female culture, like male socialization and women's socialization, and how, at least especially in Russia, it's like especially right now, what is happening, like a little bit less like philosophical conceptual freedom, and there's like a little bit more stagnation in terms of, I am a man, I go to the war. And it's just, and it's like, and all I see in that, of course, from my own like lens, but it's like, wow, like, the fear that happens, the heart closeness happens in this culture of like the military culture, the like the patriarchy, how do you call it, culture, and it's like the fear of the fear of socially show up as a man with an open and soft heart. And
Mm.
somehow there's all these ideas that like if you open your heart, you're the weak one, you're the gentle one, you're a woman like,
Yeah. Mm.
and like being in touch a little bit with the patriarchal culture here. Of course it exists in like North America too, but there's just a little bit more flexibility around it there,
Yeah.
that I'm just like I'm seeing the effects of not thinning out the hard armor.
Yeah.
I'm just really glad that it's just really beautiful to hear you talk about it. And um, yeah, I'm not going to be afraid of saying that as a male,
Mm.
as a man. I'm sorry if I'm assuming how you identify yourself
No,
as,
that's
but
right.
yeah, it's just so yeah, to me it's just the healing. So thank you. Yeah.
That's really beautiful and touching. Yeah, I do identify as a man and a male, but I've never um, held that identity very tightly, you know. And I think, yeah, globally we're trying to come to terms with how problematic um, it is to hold on to that tightly and to make assumptions and assume roles um, based on those divisions. Um, yeah, being a being a man with an open heart, or just being a human being with an open heart, I really see and feel how everyone's trying to be safe and everyone's trying to be happy and everyone's doing their best to do that. And yeah, it's really heartbreaking to see the ways in which people try to do that by subjugating or harming others. And that tends to be a very male, like that power over others seems to be tied up with the patriarchy and the male sense of it. And I think an ideal balance for any human being, whether they're male or female and however they identify, is to have the positive aspects and qualities of what we think of as traditionally male and traditionally female, and to have both of those in balance so that they're both available when the situation calls for it, and to be really stuck on that I'm a man so I have to be this way is preventing fluid and wise response to situations and circumstances.
Yeah, same as the lately I do identify as a woman. Sometimes it moves different ways, but as a female, as a woman, and it goes same way. Not identifying, for me, a lesson, not identifying too much with the like the weak, the tender, the open, the open one. And what I'm leading towards here, for example, the compassion meditation, karuna meditation.
Yeah.
And what is really important for me about that meditation is that there's this fluidity that you're talking about. Sometimes there's this tenderness that we practice as an expression of compassion. May I be open to this pain with tenderness, for example.
Yeah.
But after I connect to this tenderness, there's also, especially when I go into the world, and maybe especially as a culturally culturally socialized as a female, to have courage, from French word heart.
Mm.
I wouldn't be able to pronounce that. Um, like to have both like the tenderness and like the courage to like stand up, to speak up,
Yeah,
to sometimes yeah, be loud and like step forward and
yeah, yeah,
like that. And so, and it goes exactly as you were saying, the um yeah, to have the whole field of absolute love available to us, not just separated corners of it here and there. And
yeah. The whole range, like the tenderness and the power, like, and to be responsive to what's needed in a situation, in that whole range. Yeah.
yeah, 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 beautiful. Um, um, Nic, it is 9 minutes too. And I do have one kind of last question for you. There's many more that we didn't get to, but maybe another time, who knows?
Yeah, yeah.
um, and also, and after maybe if you do have time, maybe we do a 2, 3, 4 minute meditation. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I love that. Sure.
Good, awesome. So the last question is mm, simple, a closing one. Yeah, how are you feeling right now in the moment? Again,
Very
what is
good.
life? What is the life for you right now? And
Um,
also, like, where did our conversation take you? Where did it shift you? Where did you land?
hmm, feeling really lovely. My whole body feels pretty peaceful, and I feel some, yeah, just a sense of goodness and love, and yeah, I just feel really wonderful. Um, this is just a perfect example of why social meditation is so wonderful. And you know, maybe it's not even strictly meditation, but like the hmm, the heartfelt conversation, and the, what we've been doing is just, yeah, a beautiful example of um, what's most important and alive for me in life, connecting with people, and um, coming to a shared understanding and a shared version of what's important, and what's real, and what feels right, and doing that together is, I think, so much more uh, generative and positive than trying to do that alone, because alone we're very prone to um, the echo chamber in our own mind, and having uh, thinking things are true when they're just our perspective or opinion. And I think it's much uh, much better to come to that as a group with other people. It works better, it feels better, and it's more true and good and beautiful.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yeah, I'm just um, feeling my heart landed in my heart, warm,
Mm,
gentle, and also buoyant.
mm,
Yeah, and joyful.
mm.
um, it's yeah, what I'm going to be taking from our conversation. Well, this the flow as it happens online is beautiful. And by flow I mean like the space of union, like the like that heart open, like that space of the absolute.
Mm,
And And with that, yeah, more permit. I'm repeating myself. I've said that a few times already, but more permission, especially kind of what we were talking about with Steven Snyder in our one-on-one session, and what we were talking with you today, Nick. It gives me, yeah, more courage, yeah, to step up and to show my heart in relationships. And I feel like my friendships and my family relationships over the past year and a half have blossomed, but now the next step is to continue blossom my relationships in my work, in my professional life, because our relationships don't only happen, like their relationships are everywhere. They're not only like with our friends and family and spiritual community.
Yeah.
And not to be afraid to take that same heart space, that same joy to work as well.
Yeah.
And I'm learning how to do that. And this conversation helped me integrate that, like the feeling, and then put it into words. And you're validating it through like what is interesting to you. And so thank you. Yeah.
Wow, that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's very heartwarming.
Yay. Yeah, so we have about 3 minutes, so maybe to close. Would you like to say something if anyone is listening to us, or would you like to just have 3 minutes of silence? Or what are you inclined towards? Anything is good.
Yeah, I guess I would encourage anyone who's listening to just really, yeah, be settled in their bodies and feel their whole body, and just, yeah, recognize and look for the goodness, the positive intent that's everywhere and underlying, and even underneath things that feel difficult or problematic or uncomfortable. Even within those, there's that innate goodness and that positive intent. Just to spend a few minutes knowing that that's true and relating to things inside yourself that way.
Thank you so much, Nic. Yay.
Thank you.